Thank you for inviting me. Pleasure to be here. I'm also conscious that this is a session just after lunch. So if we start to feel the impact of lunch, please raise your hand so I know that that's a section I need to move forward faster. So it's great. We are all very interested in ESG these days. There's a lot of talk happening. There's a lot of conversations. Looks like a growing trend. But today, the focus of this conversation, I'm saying it explicitly as a conversation. It's not, I don't intend it to be a one-way. So please feel free to interrupt me if you like. Please feel free to, ask any questions, or if something is not clear, we can do a deep dive there. ESG, my focus today will be to share with you as a journey. It's been a very personal journey as well, because I started about 25 years ago in '97 on this. In a focus on corporate sustainability, worked in various organizations here and across the world. And then when it was obvious that we couldn't really move the needle much, so I said I have to do this full time. So I started this firm called Solaron, which was an ESG rating firm for emerging markets, the first in the world actually. Started here in Bengaluru in 2007. Co-founded with my wife actually. Very interesting setup, as you can imagine. And did a lot of work. We started rating companies in India. We started rating companies in 14 other emerging markets, total 15, LATAM, Asia, Eastern Europe, Africa. And the focus was that we wanted to bring risks and opportunities to the global investors so they could rate. ESG as a trend started in about 2004. So I will, this is a little bit about my background. So she's already covered it, so won't spend. But I think this part is interesting. So when we started this firm, we were initially a back office. We were doing work for some of the leading global brands in ESG ratings, MSCI, DJSI, Sustainalytics, etc. And as a result of that, we got significant exposure. So we could see actually what goes behind these rating models. There's ESG. When you talk about ESG, the ratings become suddenly very important, because these are frameworks that allow you to know which firms are doing well and which firms are not doing well. Just like you have the credit ratings, right? Credit ratings gives you a sense of how the company is being managed from a financial point of view. ESG ratings gives you a sense in terms of how it is being managed from a ESG or sustainability or long-term point of view. So we were working with all these guys, and then we had the famous BP oil spill, and then the investors globally lost about $250 billion in a matter of a couple of weeks. And that was a wake-up call. And then we had the subprime crisis, which was even bigger. It was getting so big. If all of you, I think quite a lot of people here, I see, perhaps have been working that long to remember that. It was even about to bring down the global economy, passing it on to the sovereign debt crisis, because countries were trying to take up those debts on the balance sheets. And then we had the Enron. Before that, we had the WorldCom, and then we have the Satyam right in our backyard here. So all these scandals were happening, and then people were asking questions that, how is it that the financial research was not able to, forecast all this or give us any insight? And then the same questions were being asked on the ESG rating providers, because a lot of these investors, at that time already it was about 50, 60 trillion worth of investors already starting to use ESG research. It had just started in 2004. By 2009 and 10, already it had taken off quite a bit. And they were like, ESG factors are supposed to be forward-looking, and why is it that you were not able to predict? So we took it very seriously, and being a research house, we went into the research process and we said, okay, all these rating methodologies which we are working on, which are global, which are the best brands, they take just about 2 days to rate a company, and it does not give you enough insight. So BP was being rated in 2 days, and in that time you can just collect the data on 500 indicators, and you can just give a commentary, and that's it. You don't really get to know the company deep in 2 days, and then you have to move on to other companies, and then you have to rate thousands of companies, different analysts. So we re-engineered the process. This is Indian innovation, frugal innovation, and going back to the first principles, we said it is not enough, so we got to start in a different way. We took 2 months to rate the next company, which was Petrobras in 2010, and we took 2 months, and then the result was that 2012 we put a rating on it, and 2014 we had the famous $20 billion scandal in Petrobras, which we had predicted successfully. So what happened? So we re-engineered the process, and we ended up working with all these big brands, 13 trillion worth of investors. So why I'm sharing this with you is because We have seen the good and the bad and the unworkable side of ESG. And, I was one of the first critics to say that the ratings, they are, being used as a greenwashing mechanism. And companies also, use a lot of greenwashing. So we built a framework that actually beats this, because that 2 months of work that we did, then we replicated it for Nestle here in India, 2015, if you remember the noodles scandal that happened. So we were, predicting that ahead of time. Then there were, GSK, 350 million pound fine in 2013. We highlighted it 1 year ahead. So there were a lot of things like this that were coming out. And so it was a methodology based on emerging markets, for emerging markets, and by emerging market people. These are people on the ground, all of us. And SEBI has recently come out with the requirement last year, the regulation on ESG rating agencies, that they want the rating agencies to give a methodology which is built for India. And we actually built it in 2010, 14 years ahead. So we got acquired in 2018. For 5 years we were ranked quite, in the high league in the global rankings. Got acquired by Sustainalytics, then by Morningstar. Unfortunately, that methodology is not being used, post that acquisition, which is what explains why I am back, in the market, because I am very keen that this gets used, engaging with different stakeholders, and why I am doing this session with all of you is to share the learning. So I've seen the good, I've seen the bad side, I've seen the unworkable side, and we've tried to create solutions as well. So coming from that perspective, let's go on. So Satwa is a firm that, I've started working with last year. Many of you may know Satwa. It's an impact consulting firm, supports the impact ecosystem on various aspects, whether it is investors, corporates, foundations, charities, and multilaterals. I lead the ESG practice in Satwa, which is basically trying to make ESG as useful as possible for the corporate clients, coming from the investment background. And then these are the various clients, that we work with, various different types of organizations in India and in the global south. So we deliver in Africa as well, deliver in other parts of Asia, now doing some work in LATAM as well. Now let's come to ESG. So is there anybody in this room who has not heard this word, ESG? Everybody has heard, great. Now, is there anybody who has not heard of the criticism of ESG? Because there's a lot of criticism happening in the last 2 years. FT did a movie last week. FT did a movie which is which says the ESG party has been killed. You can search on Financial Times, and they said ESG is actually over. And there have been a lot of articles in Wall Street Journal and other places. So there's a criticism that is coming in the last 2 years. Do we know why that criticism? Anybody? Anybody here? Okay, so the reason for that is simply because there are some things that are happening in the industry which are not really working well, as I've already shared with you, but they're all fixable. So what I'm going to do is, as I said earlier, do a quick journey with you, stay with me on this journey, give you a quick catch up on what really led to the ESG growth, what is not working, but what are the fundamental reasons why ESG is still important and how we can take advantage of it. So ESG grew simply because there were investors large enough and big enough and so many of them that were seriously looking at it. They started to consider that it's very serious. And this started from 2004 when the word was coined by a UN report, which was written by two good friends of mine actually, who are still good friends after so many years. And 2006 is when the PRI was formed. And PRI simply stands for Principles for Responsible Investment. It's a group of investors who sign up to 6 principles to say that they will use ESG factors in their research process. So some of you I've heard here are investors. So as you put your investment hat on, or whether you have stocks in the market, as a retail investor, you are always interested in, a couple of things. One, the company is not going to go, bad. Your investment is secured, and they're going to not do any harm to the world. Everybody, I believe, has that sense that your company, you don't want to read about your stocks or your company in the papers tomorrow, doing a lot of scandals, right? So investors have the same concerns. The only thing is their pocket size is very big. So these are investors who run, billions or trillions worth of investments every year. So they started to realize that this made a lot of sense. So there was this entire space that came up called responsible investing, which is different from traditional investing. Investing is there, but responsible investing means you are looking at these additional set of factors that give you a long-term lens. Companies can make a lot of good money very quickly in the short run, 1 year, 2 year time frame. But can they keep doing it in 10 years? Can they keep doing it in 15? Can they keep doing it in 30 years? Can they keep doing it in 50 years? So there are a lot of these criteria that are important. So this is basically what has led to the growth. So now we have about 120 trillion worth of investors globally that have come together to be part of the PRI. It's a membership-based organization like yourself at CXO Genie here. And this has driven the rest of the ecosystem. So when investors demand something, they want, like here the investors in India, they demand financial reports. If you list on the stock market, as a company, you have to report your financials, right? And you have to get audited, and then you have to, give a lot of disclosures. If there's any significant change in ownership, you have to disclose, right? In the same way, investors, when they got interested in ESG, they started asking data. That led to the growth of data and regulatory, agencies and rating organizations. And then standards came out, because then if you want data has to be reported on a certain standard, right? Just like in accounting, you have different standards, So the same way, ESG reporting standards came. And then there was pressure on the governments to create laws, because then investors want companies to comply. And just talking to them, they were not, really ready to comply. So they had to request the regulators or the governments to engage. And this is why this has been an effort that has been going on since 2006. And as a result, now you see a plethora of laws, a lot of laws. We'll come to that in the next slide. And then the pressure, therefore, comes on the company. So this is why if you're in a company where you have now a reporting pressure, it is 16 years, 17 years worth of work has gone behind to actually lead to this. And therefore, this pressure is now escalated everywhere. We have globally in across all the countries. It's not a slide meant to be read, but just to give you a sense of, that it's happening around the world. EU has been leading it for a long time, with so many laws. Don't want to go into details. You can, see it later. India also is not behind. India, because of the fact that the regulators here have been very progressive, actually. So they've tried to keep, up to date with what's happening. And India, the Indian regulators, whether it is RBI, SEBI, they've done very significant amount of work to keep the capital markets robust. And it's actually from their point of view, it's a way to keep them robust, because this is a lot of data. So financial data already covers a lot of things, but financial data is all backward looking, it's past data. What did you do last year? How are your accounts looking? ESG data is very different. ESG data is about, okay, on the environment side, what are you doing on your, input side of resources? How many materials are you using? How much energy are you using? How much water are you consuming? How much land are you consuming? How many, trees you are destroying? And then you are looking at the impact of because there are processes, there are production processes, so you have waste coming out, right? So then there is the efficiency piece, and then the waste coming out. What are you doing with the waste? And there are hazardous waste issues. Bhopal gas tragedy, everybody remembers, right? So there is safety issues. There are, there are waste management issues, and then that waste, now plastic waste, is a serious issue. Goes into the oceans, goes into the rivers, destroy the waters. So there are all those issues. So this data is actually, it helps, it's more robust, it gives you a better insight into a well-run company. A well-run company, a responsible company would be paying attention to their environmental impact. A well-run company would be paying attention to the social impact. Are you giving living wages or not? Or even if you are Apple, the world's, now it is number 2 or number 3 top market cap company, but then you're buying everything from Foxconn, and Foxconn, they are making strikes in China in your factory because they're not getting enough, wage. Or their working hours are too much to keep up with the production pressure. Imagine a brand like Apple, and then you have, and just because you outsource the issue does not mean it's not your issue anymore, right? Because you have massive marketing leverage or massive procurement leverage with your supplier to actually fix it. And imagine if this goes to the news, and we are living in a social media age. So a single news item, is enough to actually affect the brand standing, right? So this is why. So you have social issues not only on the supply chain, you have social issues on the customer side. What are you doing with your customers, right? Are the products responsible enough or not? How do people use it? Do they get enough information? Are you disclosing all the material things or not? Product in use. And this is across multiple industries. So these are factors you start to see. And the governance. Firms like Byju's here, right? Built a massive business. And what happened then? Now it is under the... Exactly, right? And then you have firms like, Satyam was an old story, but now you have, other firms, Paytm as well, what it has gone through. Governance issue. So governance is extremely important. You can build, so entrepreneurs, owners, promoters, all of us senior leaders here, we spend our life building something very valuable or protecting the value of a, big firm. And then you don't see some risks and then, all that value is lost. Imagine. It's a great loss to you, it's a great loss to the shareholders, great loss to the society, isn't it? A company like that going bad. So that's why these factors are really important, but they are forward looking because they're not going to affect the business now in the short run. But in the long run, they may become critical. They will become critical depending upon how long a time period you look at. They may not be important in the next quarter, but they will be important maybe 3 quarters down the line. They may be important two years down the line. They will certainly be important 5 to 10 years down the line. Okay. So these are the reasons why ESG came up. I hope everybody is starting to see the context of what happened. And then also because of this, investors started to notice the investment case for ESG. So they started to prefer companies that have a higher ESG rating. And because of that, therefore, the cost of capital for companies who are scoring high on ESG started to go down. And better performance on ESG also therefore leads to better performance on many other parameters because these are all leading indicators. So therefore, this is the reason why it has come up. Now, some people say all this is, criticism now on ESG, especially in US. And with the certain few media organizations, there's a lot of criticism. And then people say, oh, this is just another trend. But actually now we are going to go to this part of the presentation where to share with you, it's not just a temporary trend. There is actually fundamental factors that make ESG important. And when I say ESG, I'm including in that sustainability, which is a term that was used and still is used a lot in the corporate side. ESG has come from the investment world, as we have seen. And there's climate change. And there are other risks that are all included in the umbrella of ESG, because when you drill down those three different names or titles, they actually represent different things. So the problem is that the way we are consuming, the way we are producing, companies are producing, and the way consumers are consuming, we are already at 1.7 times the Earth's resources as a whole. Okay, and if we continue, we will need 3 times the Earth's resources, which we don't have. Tomorrow, it's like, we saw in Bangalore itself, there was a water crisis, and then sometimes there's a flooding, right? And we have seen problems of both ends in the last 2 years. And this is just 2 years. But imagine going forward, water will not be available in a large part of the country here in India and globally. There will be wars for water. Imagine when wars used to happen for resources or gold or power, there will be wars for water. And because water is not going to be available and soil is going bad as well. There's a lot of data, by the way. I will give you sources at the end where you can do more reading if you want to do. Food is not going to be available, So imagine, how will we run our companies, in the long run? If you don't have water and if you don't have food, survival is at risk. And then climate change has other, impacts as well on livelihood. And we've seen, jobs are very important for people. Livelihood is it's a fundamental need. So if fundamental needs are going to get at risk, then we have very serious concerns. So better to be prepared in advance. So this field of work, ESG as a field of work, is fundamentally needed for all of us to take it into account in our work, in our everyday work, to take decisions that are preparing our companies for the future, to take decisions that are preparing our societies for the future. So this is a fundamental reason. And this was already predicted in 1970s. 50 years ago. 50 years ago, this was already predicted. They had already said, right to the year, they had said in the 2020s and just before 2030, pollution and resource scarcity will go so much that it will start impacting food. And it is impacting now. Many parts of water, bottled water is a $300 billion market globally now. So, and imagine those who cannot afford the price to pay for drinking water. This is drinking water we are talking about, right? It's a basic need. So the root cause of all this is that we've had 300 years of industrial growth, industrial production, where many things have been considered externalities. What we see with carbon, why it has not been included is because it is considered an externality. It is not even showing on the P&L of the firms that we are managing, right? It's not a cost, neither it's a revenue number. It doesn't appear because it was considered an externality. Now, the problem with that logic is that when you don't take it into account, what gets measured gets managed. If it was never measured, it was never managed. So everybody continued to pollute carbon and use other resources. And as a result, all our industrial models that were built in the 1600 industrial revolution, they are very extractive, and they don't take into, when you don't pay the full price, then everything is free. But everything is not free forever, because nature has a limit. So what we are doing now is we're reaching those limits that nature has. So therefore we have to take it into account. That's why there is pressure to take carbon into account in our P&Ls, to have an internal cost of carbon, at least if you don't have an external cost. Even though Europe is now doing the CBAM, carbon border tax, which is saying that anything that goes there, it is in 6 commodities right now, but very soon it's going to expand. So we're going to pay tax, carbon tax, to send things there. So we have to take it into account. But don't be surprised if it is expanded to other things later. It is going to get expanded to there are already laws there passed on nature and biodiversity. They passed a law on forestry. Then we will have to take into account water and so many things. So therefore, all this is fundamentally needed. There is a very interesting fact here, which is the world economy overall is $100 trillion GDP per year approximate. Can you imagine 7% of that is cost that nature subsidizes us to do business? And we are paying nothing back to nature actually in a positive way. We are actually destroying, we're sending pollution back to nature. And because nature is a closed loop, what we send to nature will send it back to us nicely, swiftly. 7 trillion of nature's resources are not even priced. And the problem with that is that if it is not priced, then imagine how many companies would stop being profitable. We have 15, 20, 30% margin sometimes depending on which business you are. So 7% of that is not even taken into account. So therefore, this is again old data. This, if you were to update it, it will be even more right now. And in growing economies like India, it's actually even more, because we're growing much faster. So the rate of consumption of resources, is much higher, and the capacity of nature to regenerate those resources is much lower. And we are a big population. Please, let's remember that, right? We take that crown of being the most populated country now. So compared to China is 3 times our size. US is 3 times our size. China is quite bigger, right? Compared to, and the population they have. And we are a much smaller country compared to China. And then we have a much bigger. So if you look at population density, we have a serious problem. So how come we miss this? We miss this because none of our financial models and what we have been learning in the B schools, they ever taught this to us. And if they never taught us, we think it never exists. But actually it does exist. All the business school education, all the programs are now starting to get updated. They need to be rewritten, because we are not even doing a true P&L. We are not taking into account the natural costs. We're not taking into account social costs. Every business that has grown a certain size has taken in some form of explicit or implicit subsidy from their taxes. The government has subsidized. Now we have the PLI scheme, right? So the government in every country, they try to encourage certain sectors, and so therefore they give subsidy. And so there's a social subsidy also from the taxes that is included in the business, which we don't price it. And because it's not priced, therefore we don't measure it on the corporate P&L. So they need to change on the social side. We don't price trust. We don't price supplier capital. A lot of people here, from the supply chain side, COVID, before that there were some floods. After that, now there have been some supply chain issues. Everybody knows that if yesterday there was a supply chain issue, right, with the technology. So everybody tries to pass the buck. One firm saying, no, it's not me, it's my supplier. But actually, if your supplier breaks up, you break up. And this we learn only in a crisis moment. So the supplier capital also is not priced. Relationships are very transactional, very short term, but you don't think long term. And those risks, ESG encourages us to at least think about, and if we are smart enough to actually go and measure them, and if you are even smarter then go and proactively manage them to have a robust business. So this essentially is the business case. So it touches everything. It's not just a new trend. It's like digitalization came or IT came 40 years ago. In 1990s, IT came, and then there was .com boom. Everybody was doing .com. Everybody wanted to build a website, but then people didn't know what to do with it, and then there was .com bust. Same thing has happened with ESG. Now suddenly ESG has come, and everybody thinks, and there was a big boom in the COVID days. And now they are saying, oh, but now there's a bust. ESG is not needed, there's a backlash. But actually, it's not going away anywhere. Just like technology didn't go away. Technology has become integrated in pretty much everything that we do now, right? This event is not possible without technology. I'm using technology to speak, and you're using it to hear, and there's technology here, right? Everywhere is technology. We can't even differentiate between what is technology and what is not technology. In the same way, ESG is going the same way, and it has to become that. So we have to integrate it. So the best is to know it. Do not postpone it. Do not push it. Do not think the naysayers, that they're saying, oh, this is useless, this is a trend, greenwashing, all that, it's going to go away. Just do business as usual. If you are taking that path, I can assure you, your business is at risk sometime in the future. Nobody can predict when, but it will be sometime in the future. So best is to take it into account, but take it into account across all dimensions, because there's an ESG angle in HR, the way we manage our people, our internal people and external people. There's an ESG angle in finance. There's an entire field coming up called sustainable finance. There's an ESG angle in production, obviously massive, how you use resources. In marketing, people who end up making too many claims vis-a-vis, they don't deliver anything, that is called greenwashing. And that's why the industry is getting backlash. But actually, there is a responsible way to market, which we can take into account. And there is procurement. We just talked about supply chain and the systems, technology. Just last week, Google came up with an announcement that it is not going to meet its net zero goal or target for this year because the massive investments in AI, and AI is extremely water intensive. Many people don't know it. One ChatGPT, we're so excited about ChatGPT. One ChatGPT query consumes half a liter of water bottle. Half a liter of fresh water is consumed every ChatGPT query that you run. We don't know it because we don't pay attention to it. It's an externality. Somebody somewhere in the supply chain, 5-10 steps ahead, is supposed to manage, but for them it's not top of the mind right now. For them, top of the mind is, okay, let me get how much can I, get the ChatGPT to scan the entire internet? How much can I do more and more, algorithms, etc. But we're not paying attention to the cost of doing business. We're not paying attention to the other side. Everything has a cost. The fact that we are here, there is a cost of not being somewhere else, right? So there's an opportunity cost as well, and there's a direct cost. So ESG, we have to start putting it in our decision making, in our thought process. So, and there is a stage along the way, right? It's not just, can somebody tell me about time? Am I doing on time, or am I, good? Yeah. So there are stages along this. Now, we are not saying that everybody needs to, become a champion on day one. There is obviously a stage journey. In the beginning, we want to at least learn and understand what these factors are, which are holistic, by the way, a holistic way of running a business. And then, because there is so much focus on compliance, in India and across the world, so we want to be compliant, because if you don't comply, you have risk of penalties, you have risk of fines, you have brand reputation risk. And then we want to get into performance. We want to quickly get into the performance aspect of ESG in terms of how can we, because compliance, as we will see here, remains a cost center. Now, the thing is, in India, a lot of companies are already doing ESG. Is there anybody here not doing ESG in your firm here? Can you please raise your hand? So you're already doing it, right? So, but all of that still is a cost, because you have to implement some processes, implement a system, a reporting solution, do some upskilling, but still cost. Where is the ROI? All the CXOs here would be like, show me the money. So the money, if you want to get into the profit center piece, then you have to look at ESG as a performance conversation. And for this, you require to go actually deeper, because this requires using ESG as a way to create value. And there are a lot of opportunities for us, So India has a massive opportunity, but it has a massive risk also. We are very vulnerable to climate, and we can achieve exponential growth. We are supposed to achieve exponential growth. Everybody is expecting, but we can't achieve it using the same model that the West has used or China has used. We have to have a different way of growth. Otherwise, India is going to be destroyed, or world is going to be destroyed because of the climate impact, because of the resource impact. We're not going to have so many resources to reach the Amrit Kal to 2047 using the same technologies, same business models, same processes, same production systems that the West or China have used. We cannot do that. It's not possible. We don't have so many resources. So we're going to need upskilling. We're going to need upskilling on ESG and climate and sustainability. We're going to need green jobs. We're going to need, a lot of work to be done across many different sectors. So this is what is needed. But there is opportunity. So if we don't do it, our business is at risk. We may not exist as we know it because there will be other businesses that will come and take our place. And if we don't do it, there is a loss of opportunity because India has a net zero target of 2070, which is, by the way, too far, but even that needs 10 trillion worth of investment. But where is that investment going to go? Which, by the way, is a very underestimated number. 10 trillion is not going to be enough. But let's say 10 trillion. Where is that money going to go? You have to invest in solutions. You have to invest in technologies. You have to invest in processes and businesses that have to supply a solution, right? Even if you're sitting with a $10 trillion check, somebody has to give a solution, right? Where is that solution going to come from? People like us in this room. So let's create those solutions. Let's start thinking about creating those solutions. And there are so many others, so I will not stay here. We'll keep it for questions. So these are some factors that we should, if you want to go on the performance side, we want to create solutions, we want to create value. There are some principles. So I've written a book on ESG. I'll give you the slide at the end. You can see it if you want to study more about it. And the second one I'm writing now, which will come out later this year, is actually going deeper into this point about performance, using ESG as a way to create value. So if we want to create value, you want to take responsibility, not just for your own internal operations in the company, but also in your supply chain. And perhaps their supply chain, suppliers' supply, which is your value chain, right? So this is the entire logic about scope 1, scope 2, scope 3, that you got to take care of your entire value chain. You want to look at frugality. Less is more. The less materials you use, the less resources you use, the more you can save for yourself and for others for the future. So these are some principles. If you take these principles and design your production processes, design your business models, design everything that you're doing in your business, you will actually start creating value. It's about inclusion also. Why should we stay restricted to current customers? Why not go to customers whom we are not even serving, who don't even think as our customers right now? It's all about inclusion. Then balance of short-term interest versus long-term interest. And multiple stakeholders have sometimes conflicting interests. So balancing all of them is also, I will not go into too many now. So if you were to summarize, so there are a lot of people who get confused about ESG. So the book I've written is essentially called Essence of ESG. It is to simplify. And 500 data points, but you can simplify with just 3 words. E is all about resources. How you manage your resources. It doesn't matter what, physical resources, energy resources, tangible or intangible, but how you manage the resources. And the operating logic there is less is more. But everybody knows it, right? All Indians know it. Less is more. So, but that's it. There is nothing complicated in this. S is about relationships. All your relationships, internal, external, with employees, with labor, with suppliers, and your customers, and your non-customers. So this is about relationships. How you manage. Are they transactional? So the operating logic there is, are they transactional or are they long-term? Do we just meet for this event, or just like CXO Genie has done, keep meeting again and again, build long-term relationships, help each other, nurture each other with knowledge, with experience sharing, things like that. And G is about right conduct. Do not take shortcuts. Shortcuts come because you think short-term, but if you think long-term, we will not take shortcuts. So it's about maintaining trust, building trust consciously, maintaining trust. So these are the benefits that accrue if we start to think of how to use ESG as a value creation. Now, there are some case studies here, because the simplest question somebody will think in their mind is, oh, sounds very good. Has somebody used it? Can I make money from it? So we'll just do one. I had brought 3 case studies. We'll leave it for questions or later. But Unilever, one of the biggest examples of a company that actually started to implement it. And you can see that they first made the commitment, in 2000, year 2000. They made a 10-year plan, and they did achieve some things, but it was to a large extent a failure. The biggest interesting thing was they didn't give up on it. They learned the learnings from there, and they created a new plan in 2010, and they implemented it till 2020. And the profits grew from 6.5 billion to about 8.5 billion in those 10 years. And this is a commodity business, FMCG. They sell soaps and toothpaste and things like that. It's a highly you measure your profit in pennies. So they made a 30% growth in profit, while the revenue grew only 10%. So you can see massive increase in profitability. Where did they get it? They used both the levers. They cut down risk, they reduced wastage, which gave them about 1.2 billion euros of benefit, taking the resources out, unnecessary resources, things like that. But they also made money of 0.7 billion, on the opportunity side using sustainable brands. So they launched sustainable brands. Now this is a brand company. A brand company is very possessive about their brand. They will never let go of their brand. But they created a program where they consciously started to destroy their old brands and create new brands which were sustainable brands. They had a certain promise that they will use resources well, responsibly. And this is what they were promising to the millennials and the Gen Z. And this is why the growth in that sustainable brands business has been about 70 to 75%, consistently. So, and the CEO actually said, he has written a book also, you can read it, Net Positive. And the one who did this, Paul Polman, and the CEO after him said that, this is serious, and they did this 20-year journey, but the results came convincingly, and he says that you can be part of the problem or you can be part of the solution. We chose to be part of the solution. So this is, I think, would like to end here. We will not go into, these are case studies of how you should not do it, or how if you ignore it, what can happen to the biggest global incidents that happened in this space, where billions was lost. Volkswagen lost about 50 billion, of not taking this into account at the right time and missing the opportunity. And so this is the book that I've talked about. If you want to read more, because this is an introduction session, just half an hour. If you want to read more, you're welcome to take a look at it. And there is a training also that we do. Actually, it's a deeper dive, about 6, 7 hours, 8 hours worth of training that we do with ET Masterclass, me and my mentor. So I got into this space because of him. I read his article long 25 years back. So we do this together. This is the second series happening this year with ET. So if you are interested, you can study it more, and perhaps if you need, we can do more work, in the future. So we'll stop here, and time for Q&A. Yes.
You mentioned about that. Hi. So you mentioned that every line of AI code costs about half a liter of water bottle. Can we understand this better?
ChatGPT query, not the code, not the code line. The ChatGPT, the final query that you do.
Right.
Yeah, you go and look at data. So it's half a liter of water is used because it is used to cool down the servers, all the queries that are run, the scanning that was done, and all the processing that was done, the final result that comes you. So the energy cost and the heat generated, all the water required to cool down those servers is about half a liter.
Got it. Thank you.
So that's why in the software that we make, this is the software capital of the country, we should pay attention to not just the software that we are making, but the cost of running that software. It's a criteria that we should think, how are we going to cool those servers down, and the code should be efficient. It should not be very complicated code. So we have to consciously build, I'm not saying don't build software, but build software keeping the cost of running it in mind, which is a new way of thinking, right? We were not thinking all these years of the cost of running the software because it was assumed that it will always be there. Just hire one more server, just put one more server, and that's it. Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. So as you talked about externalities, right? Like the carbon pricing or the water getting priced, which might be in future, right? Because of the scarcity. So the companies have to price it in. So like the companies are going to pass it on, right? To the consumers. So ultimately, who is going to pay the price? Is the consumers or the companies who are kind of creating the products?
In the end, we have to learn to pay the price of what we are doing, isn't it? We have to be, that's also the first principle of responsibility, isn't it? So we have to be responsible for what we consume. So, but we have to, as a company, we should at least recognize the true cost and we should pass it on. If we don't do it, anyways, consumers will pay, but some other consumers will pay or in another form. So Delhi, if you see now, Delhi, everybody has to just to live properly in the winter, they have to use an air filter at home and in their offices, and there's a cost of running that, and still doesn't cover everything. And the health impact of that, 10-year lifetime reduction, average impact on people, and the healthcare cost that then either the government has to pay or private people have to pay. So if we don't take it in the right stage, recognize the cost, it is still there in the system. Somebody has to cover it, at somewhere down the line.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, lady there.
Hi,
Yes.
thank you. Very insightful and informative.
Thank you.
I would like your opinion on the impact of AI on ESG. While there are diverse opinions, what's your view, short term and long term?
I can do a half an hour session on that. So it's a very, AI is obviously creating a lot of enthusiasm, and rightfully so, because it's like the next, growth spurt in technology sector. But I think it has implications which we have not taken into account. And what does ESG tell us? ESG tell us only two things. Think really long term. Think for your children, their children, children's children, whatever, and think holistic. Don't miss anything. So if we just apply these two aspects to AI, I think the fact about regulation is not clear. Even though they're trying to say, oh, we need to have a regulation, it's not clear who's going to regulate, because there's a significant amount of power to that AI, engine to decide for us. We are giving them the power to decide for us, which is very dangerous, right? You can compute as much as you want, you can process, you can bring all the data, but do not give them the power to decide, because then we lose our, our ability. Then why are we there for, right? So we should not give the decision-making power to AI, only give the enabling power. Let them process, give us analysis, give us data, give us options. Do not let them decide. That's one. Second thing is the resource impact, which we've already talked about. Third thing is the massive social impact. There's a huge impact on costs. Just the fact that ChatGPT, the 3, 4 versions, they have brought to the productivity and the anticipated productivity gains, and then the geopolitical situation, the job growth stopped for the last year and a half, right? There were no jobs, as much as we wanted. So I don't understand. We want machines to do the work, but what will happen to all these people? Why are we not thinking about people? So we have a problem. We don't think people first. We think profit first, and that's a problem, because why we are doing those machines? Yeah, productivity, but productivity gain for whom? All those people who are going to sit idle. We are not thinking about them. Productivity gain for a few. The one who owns that firm and the one who's promoting the technology will become super rich. And what are they going to do? They're going to go get an island somewhere and live there. And still, what are they going to do with all that money? Beyond a certain amount, what do you do with money? So there is a limit to that. So therefore, we have to think. So I think there is a design problem. There's a thinking, and that's what ESG is. ESG is a great force to heal the industrial system. It's a great force to heal the society if we use it the correct way. So we should think holistically. We should think long term and use AI where we have unnecessary tasks. Let's productize them. Let's improve the productivity there. Very good, very good. We should not waste time doing unnecessary things. But where we have a human job going away because AI is doing it, I think that's stretching it too far. But it's a controversial topic. I know some people will think otherwise. I spent time in the Silicon Valley. I know some people will not like it there, but the truth is the truth.
Hello.
Yes, sorry, I can't see. Yes, yeah.
Rudresh here. So whatever the issues which we talked about the AI or the ChatGPT with respect to the power hungry. So we have the same issue with respect to Bitcoin as well, which runs on the proof of work way back in 2022 or 2021. But at the end of the day, everyone forgot it, and the servers moved to the electricity friendly nations, and everyone has forgotten it now. So the same thing happens with AI as well as ChatGPT down the line as well. So what do you think?
You talked about Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin is a way to, to make the financial system more efficient.
No. What I'm asking is, see, what happened with the Bitcoin, the same thing happens to ChatGPT as well. Everyone forgets it down the line. No one will talk about these days no one is talking about the power hungriness of the proof of work at all. We have one more model built on the proof of work. So a number of, since we are on the verge of the bull market of the Bitcoin crypto, we will see a number of crypto based on the proof of work, and the power hungriness will keep on increasing, but keep on increase. So, but these days no one is talking about that. So everyone forgotten it. So same thing happens to AI as well, ChatGPT as well, down the line. At the end of the day, what matters is money for everyone.
Yeah, so So clearly, I mean, there is a human tendency to go for trends. We like to just follow the group mentality, which is what we have to question here. We have to think of the long-term consequences of at least our personal investments, our work, professional work, what we are doing, and ESG is helping us to broaden the scope, to make it holistic, think long-term, and if you think long-term, these factors will come in. You know, there is a talking about principles. There is another principle I've not covered here, which is the truth will show up in time. It's just a matter of time. If you're not doing the right decisions, the risk will show up. You just have to wait a little bit longer. Some of these biggest companies, the risks always show up, but they come a bit later.